All right, Ms. Bridges, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. It's kind of a big week for us here in our school system.
It
We've
is.
it's called Wintersville. People don't know that who are listening, but our biggest rival, crosstown rival, it's that week. So we've been dressing up all week, and thank you for taking time out of your schedule. I know it's busy to talk to us a little bit about teaching's profession. So you're the third and final interview on this topic, and we interviewed Dr. Green, who came on and talked about this from the apex of administration of school system, the superintendent or assistant superintendent. And we talked to a couple weeks ago, Madison, one of your big success stories, and see how work-based learning and teaching as profession work together for students, getting the student perspective. And so now you're the one who gets to bring it all together, so no pressure. But if you will, tell us just a little bit about your background. I kind of floated the idea or teased the idea that you have a unique perspective because you're different than me in that you didn't come into career in tech ed at the beginning of your career. So tell us just a little bit about you before we get started.
Okay. I went to college to be an accountant, and about a year before graduation, I decided I didn't want to do that. So I switched my major to secondary education English, ended up graduating in December, which is not the most ideal time to get a job, but I started working at our local technical college. So I started in technical education in the capacity as an English and psychology teacher. So initially I spent 3.5 years at the time it was Valdosta Technical College. Now it's Wiregrass.
Yeah. Okay.
And I stayed there, that was a great experience, loved what I did. But an opportunity came available to teach just English with a 190-day contract. So I was like, sounds good to me. And I left Wiregrass and came to Lowndes High School in 1998 and taught freshmen for 1 year. And then I taught seniors, which was British Lit for, 20 years, 21 years, something like that. And then an opportunity came to where I could move out of English. And that was a very comfortable spot for me. I had taught British literature from co-taught to honors, gifted, and AP lit for, 2 decades really. And I was department head, but I wanted a change. And so the opportunity came for me to leave that comfort zone and come to CTAE and work in work-based learning and the teaching as a profession pathway. So I have loved every minute of it. I've always loved my job. I like being a teacher, but seeing kids want to go into education makes my heart very happy. And it's hard to get them because of, honestly, sometimes those of us in our own profession deter others from going into education. And I, spend, 2 face-to-face classes telling them it's the best career choice you will ever make. If you want a family, if you want to impact others, you want time to where you can get to know your colleagues and get to know students. And, you have students who are now Jason's age that it's like, oh my gosh, like I remember when you were, the 18-year-old knothead, and now you're the adult and, you have kids of your own and like, but I mean, it comes full circle, and it's the most rewarding career, the best career choice I think anybody could make if you love kids. So
speak quickly. If you hit on something that I mentioned with Dr. Green. Teachers are often the worst recruiters to our field.
yes.
Just speak to that just for a minute or two.
My students in my pathway tell me that Miss So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so told us you don't want to be a teacher. And I'm like, why? And I said, you have to look at it from the perspective of most teachers in Georgia are on a 190-day contract. That's your teaching contract. And I said, you think about what other people who are not teachers, they're working, I think it's 265 days a year. I said, so that's a good bit of time. I said, now teachers don't have June, July, and August off, like, that little, old adage that, here we are and, we're off all of that time. But we do have holidays where we can spend with our families, Christmas and Thanksgiving and summers and spring break and whatnot. But teachers do, they tell kids, you don't want to be a teacher, you don't want to be a teacher. And it just baffles me because I love what I do and I love kids. There's so many perks. So you can choose.
It's why you're good at doing the teaching as profession program. So let's talk a little bit, let's pivot a little bit and talk about recruiting to your program. And what kind of students are you looking for? How do you recruit those students? And then we'll follow up with the question about work-based learning after that.
My pathway is an application pathway. And I will tell you that when I first started, I was probably a little bit more lenient than some predecessors about letting different kinds of students in. I don't think they all need to be the smartest and, the top of your class to be a good teacher. I think
I was at the top of my class, Andrea.
you need a good work ethic. You need to love kids, and you need to have a willingness to continuously learn and grow. And so if you can do those things, you can be a good teacher. You don't have to know all the answers. You don't have to, be able to, do things that, less than 1% of the population can do. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that student who has, good attendance, good work ethic, willing to work, work hard to grow. Like from day one, I put them in front of the class teaching something. So I'm getting them comfortable with, the skills that they're going to have as they make their way into the field of education, and hopefully hone those skills and, foster some growth in those areas. But I want them to be able to see their own growth and know that when I first came in here, I was scared to death. And then when I stood up in front of the class, I got red and blotchy and, almost passed out. But now I can do this, with everybody. So that's the kid I'm looking for. Discipline obviously is something that, we look at, but kids are kids and they make mistakes. Adults make mistakes. And I'm not going to kick a kid or not allow the opportunity for a kid to be in the program because they did something that, got them in trouble when they were, in 9th grade or 8th grade or, even last year, they changed. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for students who are willing to learn, like kids, and, are good role models and examples.
All right. So now let's move into your partnership with work-based learning. Now you also, so you run your program, you help me run work-based learning. So you have a foot in both of those worlds. What does work-based learning, the way, and then I'll let you actually go ahead and explain the model, explain how your program works, the classes, how it's sequenced with work-based learning, and then kind of, I know a lot of people are wanting to know. They've asked me, they said, hey, how do you run your program? I said, I don't run the TAAP program. I said, my good friend and partner, Andrea, does. So they want to know how you run it, like how you set it up. So beyond the having them apply and accepting them, what's it look like? What do your partnerships look like with local schools? And then how has work-based learning kind of helped enhance that part, that last part of your class?
Okay, so we have 2 face-to-face classes in the pathway. Those 2 classes obviously are just like a regular traditional class. Once they get through those 2 courses, they are able to, I give them an opportunity to pick a school within our system. So we have 8 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, and high school. We also have an alternative school. So there are places that students can go. Most of my students drive. I've had a few who do not have transportation of their own, and we can make placements within our own school for those. But they get to choose, do they want elementary? Do they want middle? We try to find one that's closest to their home. We are very fortunate that we have an elementary school probably less than 2 miles away. They can go to, that's easy, to get back and forth. So once they get through their 2 face-to-face classes, they are placed in a practicum situation with a mentor teacher. I feel like I have a very good relationship with all of the principals. at those schools. I have a lot of support from my school, from the county office. We are working, constantly trying to, give our students at Lowndes High School an opportunity to see what it's like at, a middle school or an elementary school from a different perspective, because they may have been at that school as a student. And a lot of them do choose to go to the school that they attended. Some of them, may not have attended one of those schools here, but, they'll kind of figure it out. I let them, if there's a teacher that they want to work with, if it works, I can do that. Because some of them, they had that favorite teacher that they recognized as being a good teacher, and they want to go and learn from that person. And more often than not, those teachers welcome those students back, and, are excited for them to be there, because truly it is a partnership. And our students coming out of the TAAP pathway, they're going into another school to be another set of eyes and ears, and to help teach, to do some small group, to do pullouts. And, that's part of it, mini student teaching. So,
and that's a good thing to this is not a shadowing experience. I want people who are watching this notice they are pre-service teacher educators. Like, they are teaching lesson planning, classroom management, like they're doing it.
Teaching lessons. I'm going to see them teach lessons. If I can't be there, they're recording it, they're sending it, uploading it to me. They're taking on the role of the teacher under the teacher's, mentorship. Obviously, they're not a glorified copy, person. They're not grading, ABCD tests. They are there. They are walking around the room. They know if I come and they're sitting, they need to be with a student and helping one-on-one or a small group, that they're not just, sitting idle, that they're doing. And, trying to teach, initiative, and let them see what it's like to be, in charge of a classroom, and, how do you manage 25 students? So that is how that program is set up. So as far as work-based learning, once they complete the pathway, the third class of the pathway is the practicum. So they go in and they have a mentor, and they stay with that mentor for the duration of the semester. If I have students who start as 10th graders, they usually have finished their pathway their 11th grade year. So their 12th grade year gives them an opportunity to be a work-based learning GAP student and go back to that school, another grade, which is very encouraging for, I think, the future of educators. Maybe they went to a kindergarten classroom the first time, and now they want to see, like, what's a 5th grade classroom like? And
What's the difference?
Completely different. I had a student last year who was in kindergarten, and the way her schedule worked out, and the elementary school is so close, she was able to go during her 3rd block, and it was only 3rd block. And we typically don't let them leave campus and then come back to campus, but she was going to the elementary school, 2 miles away. She had the extra time for lunch. So she's doing that as her work-based learning class, and she was in a pre-K class. Day 1, she comes back and tells me, like, oh my gosh, you weren't kidding. They're completely different. I said, see, so they have a perspective, and they know, like, I don't like the littles, or I like the big elementaries or middle schools where I want to be. So I feel like it helps them maybe not get into a degree 2-3 years down the road that they may not enjoy, or they think they want to be middle grades until they get there, and then they realize they want to be high school or elementary. So it gives them opportunities to see a lot of things. So the more times they can be in a different classroom or a different setting, I think it benefits them.
100%. And on the rare occasion, there's been times where we've had students who were taking their last class with you, their 3rd class in the TAAP program as a senior, and we just had them work that last one with an extra block. So they worked TAAP, practicum, and work-based learning, back to back, so they could stay for an extra hour or an extra hour and a half, since we're on the block schedule. So it's been a really good partnership for us, because, again, your students, are kind of my bell cows in that youth apprenticeship category, which is one of my bigger goals. It exposes your students, gets them more time in the classroom where they're doing it another semester. Heck, I think we've even had two or three students do it for multiple semesters. And then tell them a little bit about our commercial partnership. So once the student if they go through your program, they want to teach, they want to work with kids, they love kids. We put them in the private sector, or excuse me, the public sector, in the school systems. But talk a little bit about our private sector partnerships that we've got.
We have a very good relationship with our local daycares, and these are daycares that are certified by the state, and with various certifications. But they're good places. They have curriculum, standardized curriculums. We have students who work after school. So when our school is released at 3 o'clock, our daycares have after school programs running. Our local YMCA has after school programs. So I'm able to be kind of a pipeline for those businesses that need workers, and they'll call and like, hey, I need like 8 kids. Do you have any? We have that many after school students, or, especially in May, they start getting, antsy about, like, we have, a lot of kids in the summer. I need, like, send me your best students. Like, I need them to teach. I need them to be able to do, like, know what curriculum looks like, know what lesson plans look like, know what teaching looks like, not just, supervising playtime. So we are able to work with those businesses and help get them students, and especially if they stay and go to college locally. I have 2 students now who are both at VSU. Actually, I have 4 who, sorry, my phone's ringing, have, let me count. There's 5 students at one of our daycares and 1 at another, who are all VSU students, which is our local university. And they are still working in that, business after graduation. So, and they are some of their best workers. And they're like, I need,
yeah, one of my passions, and I've said this whenever I'm traveling and presenting or consulting, and people will say, Jason, since you're in workforce development, which is what I do, workforce development at the high school level, the secondary talent level. They say, what do you think is the biggest need in our emerging workforce? And they're always usually pretty shocked when I say childcare. Childcare is the biggest and most imminent need for our workforce, because it's so expensive. There are so few people who are wanting to go in and do it. And so what happens is you're forcing a lot of parents, whether it's the dad or the mom, to choose, do I go work to make X amount of dollars, to spend most of that to pay for my child to go to daycare, or do I stop working and stay home and save that money? And what you're really doing when that happens is you're pulling talented people out of the workforce, because childcare is not readily available, and it is absolutely not affordable. And so we are putting talent through your program into those. We're trying to saturate the market so that there are more workers in those areas. I think childcare is the most imminent need in workforce moving forward. I don't know what else is going to rival that. I think it's even bigger than talent availability, because if you don't do it right, it's actually taking talent out of the workforce and diluting that talent pool. So, all right. So talk a little bit about, first, I'm going to say this: if there's any questions for Andrea in the chat, I'm monitoring the chat too. You can either put those in the chat. Yeah, just put those in the chat for me, and I'll see if any come through. We can ask her. The last part of our interview will be that. So we talked about the partnership. We talked about work-based learning. We talked about, what do you teach? So talk a little bit about, once you do you great partnerships, private and public, how you recruit them, what your program looks like, but what are you covering with them? Like, that's when I sat in your class a few times, I'm always have to fight to be a student and participate in the conversation, because it's always good. But you're really developing. You're not showing them how to to draw coloring books or build coloring books. You're not showing them. You're showing them like how to actually be pedagogy and content experts. So walk through a little bit about some of the lessons that you teach them that people would be surprised about, and how prepared these students are when they emerge from your program to actually go into a classroom and be a good practitioner.
Well, the 2 classes, the face-to-face classes, examining the teaching profession and contemporary issues in education. And when you think about contemporary issues in education and COVID, I mean, contemporary issues pre-COVID versus post-COVID, completely different. How do we look at, what we're doing now? We're on a Zoom. Like, we didn't do this on a regular basis pre-COVID.
No, you're right.
I mean, I remember I'm old enough to be, one of the first students in college who had a distance learning class that was horrendous, that we might see you, we may not, we may hear you. But we cover everything from the history of education, the founding of schools, what early schools look like in America to what do they look like now. We cover all of the laws that govern education. We look at specific cases that set precedents. We actually just started our law chapter this week. And so we've been going over Professional Standards Commission, Code of Conduct, certificates. I pulled up my certificate, showed them what it looked like. So this is how old I am. This is when I got it. And these are all my updates. And what is a code of conduct and why is that important? We talk about, from, special education, gifted students, students with disabilities. How do you become a teacher? The traditional four-year college route to maybe Georgia TAAP, Teach for Georgia, different alternatives, and not just thinking of teaching as teachers. Like the field of education can be counselors and administrators and speech language pathology and all of different things in the umbrella. So one of the very first things that I do, whether I have a student to start in, the examining class or the contemporary class, was I show them the state salary schedule. We talk about salary, we talk about stipends and stuff, supplements, and working 190 days versus working a 200-day contract or an extended day contract. There's their bill.
Yeah.
And they are amazed to figure out, because we do some math, which is scary that the English teacher's doing some math, but we figure out, what are these teachers making per hour? Like here we've got, 10 years of experience, specialist degree, extended day, softball coach. What do we do?
Yeah.
So we cover everything, and I will have to brag on our students because we have 100% pass rate with our end of pathway test.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Please do.
That is, I think that speaks volumes for what they do and the rigor of our curriculum, but I also think it's fun.
It speaks volumes, and you're humble. It speaks volumes of what you do, because you've never had a student not pass their state credentialed into pathway assessment for Georgia Pathways. So you're humble. I'll say that for you because I know you won't. That speaks volumes of how you teach them and how you mentor, disciple them, and how you run your program.
Well, they do get a credit. That's the other thing. So once they complete the pathway, they pass their end of pathway assessment, they can take a college credit into, when they start, their journey. And even if they decide not to be in education, it can be an elective class because it's, that intro class. And so the University System of Georgia honors that, all of our schools, and they will take that. And that's, 3 credit hours that student or that student's parents don't have to pay for. And as a mother of a sophomore in college, that is most appreciated.
Yeah. Now, last question I'm going to ask you, and then I've got one in the chat so far, and we'll get to the if there's any other ones. Since we're in the mode of bragging on your program, talk to them a little bit about your Sullivan Scholars, what that looks like. Because that program, when people find out about that program at Valdosta State University, like their minds are blown. So just talk about a little bit about what it is real quick, and then how many of your students, since you've been here, and you came in with me at work-based learning. So we're in our 6th year. So you've been 5 years. How many of your students have been able to get that? Pardon announcements.
Please, teachers, please do not dismiss students who sent in a note to be dismissed. That will be at the end of 3rd block at 1:23. Again,
now everybody knows. We also have a pep. I mentioned it was a very big week for us. We have a pep rally in about an hour. So a lot of announcements today. So hey, the things that happen in a school day, right?
It's all the things.
Yeah, all the things are happening. So Sullivan Scholarship, and how many of your students have gone through that?
We have had 4 Sullivan Scholars, and well, that's not that many. Well, it is, because there are fewer than 30 that are chosen. The first year, I think there were 30, maybe 32, and then they have reduced the number that they have accepted over the years just for cost. But The Sullivan Scholar is based on a scholarship that was in the memory of a former teacher who taught, I think, Ruby Sullivan taught for 60 something years, maybe.
Mhm.
It is a complete full ride, meals, dorm, the matriculation fees, I mean, all the fees. I think they have to pay for their parking fee. They have a Sullivan Scholar house that they go and they do group meetings and, activities and, team building, mentoring, just support. So that's on campus. But those students go through an extensive application process. They're vetted, interviewed, that it is based on need. So the students have to be the one thing that is the prerequisite is they have to be eligible and receive free or reduced lunch. So it is a needs-based scholarship. It's pulling from rural communities in our area. Mainly schools who are Title I schools. They have students. Those students are pulled in. Lowndes being in the county seat where Valdosta State is, we are not a Title I school, but they allow us to nominate students. And every student I have nominated has been accepted.
Yeah.
So I think that's
awesome.
pretty awesome.
Yeah, and what's the total now? I know it's at least 3.
1, 2, 3. I've had 5 actually.
So you've had basically 1 a year, basically is what we've got. It averages out to 1 a year.
So
That's awesome. And that puts those students at such an advantage.
when they graduate, they pay for, they give them a stipend to pay for the GACE, which I think now it's $275.
Couple $100, yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's a lot for a 21-year-old who's
Yeah.
graduating. Like here, welcome to the profession. You got to take the test first. And
Ton of
so
money, yeah.
So it is a great program. The student that's a freshman this year, I talk to her often and she, tells me all the things they do. She loves her roommate. They put them in, dorms that are close together. So they're a very tight group. We have one student who's graduating this year as a Sullivan Scholar. So it's
and that one, we can't go into specifics with that one, but that one's kind of really close to your heart because of some of the complications that went into. So, and I saw her the other day at Panera and she was so excited talking about, going through and kind of made me just sit back and say how proud I was of our program. So we got one quick question from Lee. If anybody else has any, put them in the chat. We're about to wrap this up. Lee Goodman says, has demand for TAAP surfaced that overlaps with surrounding school districts? And I'll let you answer that. I'll say from my experience, and having people ask me how Andrea does such a good job with this, yes, and from rural areas specifically, recruiting teachers to rural areas. But I'll let you speak to the TAAP specific of that. Are you seeing this program have success in other surrounding counties? Are we able to put students eventually in those counties? And I would say we don't have a ton of success stories about students going into university or graduating and going to college because we've only been doing this for 5 years. So, most of those students haven't had time to graduate from college yet. Only our first year students have. And one of those is already working through dual enrollment. We interviewed her, Madison Ply. But the question is, has demand for TAAP surfaced that overlaps with surrounding school districts? Have you seen that with any of your peers in neighboring or even contiguous counties?
Yes and no. There's 2 education pathways. One is ECE, early childhood education, and the other is TAAP. And it's kind of like when the pendulum swings, TAAP used to be, the one, and then ECE. And then now there is a movement back to TAAP because it's more inclusive rather than exclusive of what kind of educator you're looking for, which ECE is very limited to, birth to, elementary age, whereas TAAP, is more overarching. A lot of systems have both. Your smaller rural schools, frankly, just don't have the money to run 2 programs. And so they may pick 1 or 2, but our state superintendent's, one of his big initiatives is a teacher pipeline, moving students out of rural areas into college and then back to those rural areas. Like, what can we do to get them to come back home and teach? And so there are programs across the state, or schools across the state that are adding TAAP, that are doing things to increase enrollment, trying to encourage, students to join the program, because every school has the same difficulties and challenges that we do. It's hard to get students to say, hey, I want to be a teacher, because of all of, what they hear. And a lot of it is from our own, but, teachers don't make enough money, and, there's too much to do, and, all the things, but, that's probably the greatest challenge. But I think more rural schools are, if they can afford it, they are adding these programs. And a lot of their pathway teachers are work-based learning and TAAP. I mean, Jason and I see them that way, or they may be, TAAP, and they may do food, nutrition, and wellness, or, some other classes as well. But I do think within the state of Georgia, our state school superintendent's initiative to, create that teacher pipeline, like, we've got to, reestablish, people wanting to be in that profession. And how do we feel all of these baby boomers who are retiring?
Yeah. And look, I mean, you and I were at the end of school last year. We were in our end of the school year faculty meeting, and the stage was full of teachers who are retiring. Like, literally, I mean, it was 40 from now we have a big school, but that's a lot of people to replace. And sometimes there's not as many entering the profession as there are leaving. And that's where a program like yours comes in. I would say to anyone who's starting this program, I would start from its genesis and have the TAAP roots, the roots for the TAAP program, or whatever your state's equivalent is. Plant those roots, at least assimilate that with work-based learning, because it's going to have an opportunity to enrich that student's experience, give them more options, give them a chance to go in the second semester and do a different grade, or a different school, or a different teacher. And so, I mean, I love this program. Again, it's a great program for us. You go back and watch the previous episode. That's the fruit of this partnership and your program, and it's done well. You mentioned the superintendent, but if you go back to the first episode in this series, you see Dr. Green, who's one of our assistant superintendents, and you can see his vision and passion for what this does. And we're looking for really good things for our students who are about to graduate. Hopefully we can retain them in our system, get them plugged in, and then maybe go to a conference. You and I go to a conference and present this model. Hopefully that'd be a lot of fun. So, Andrea, anything else you want to add before we go?
No, just encourage, your students in your area that teaching is something that is the most rewarding career that they can have. Encourage them to be teachers. And, if you're an educator yourself, and I assume that you are watching this, think about what you say, even if it's just kind of a gist around students, because they are listening. Trust me, because let me tell you what so-and-so said. And I'm like, no names, but they are listening. So, and they know who likes their job and who doesn't.
They do. And it makes a difference. Andrea, are you okay if I put your email in the chat? Some people ask me if they can reach out to you. And so I'm gonna put Andrea's email in the chat now. Hope I spelled that right. I did. Well, Andrea, thanks again for your time. I know it's a really, really busy time for us, at least this week, and then fall break next week. So we're trying to get everything done. Grades are due today too. Hey, grades are due today. So
and we are done with
and
grades.
we're done with it. So it's been a busy week, and I know I'm very thankful for you, putting this in your schedule, squeeze it in. I know that that our people who are both here live and who are going to watch this afterward are going to be very grateful for that. So thank you again, Andrea. I appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in, everybody, and I hope you have a great weekend. And we will our next episode will be Mike Hassler and I doing a 2152 podcast, talking about these 3 interviews, putting a bow on it, and then moving on to our next topic. So y'all stay tuned for that. Thank you so much. Andrea, you have a great day. Okay.